This is my third video on some of my favorite stories and moments from the life of Martin Luther King. If you haven't seen the first or the second one, go to my profile, click on them, and watch them right now. So in this video, I'm going to talk about why Dr. Martin Luther King's life led him to being ready to be a civil rights leader in the time period that he needed to be one in. And that it's a reflection for your life that sometimes the things you do in your life, even if you're just doing it kind of like to see what something is, like you're inspired to go to school, you're inspired to learn something, you're inspired to do something, that oftentimes it's preparing you for a future you don't even know that you're stepping into. So why was it super important that Martin Luther King had a doctorate degree in theology, that he went to seminary school? Here's why it was very important. Because for hundreds of years, the church, in many different ways, had used the Bible, had used all kinds of different tools, had used religion to justify their horrible treatment of people, not just here in America, but around the world. And so when it came to actually holding them accountable for the fact that what they were doing and what they were saying did not line up with the actual gist of the book that they were referring to, did not line up with the messaging of the higher power they were always referring to and calling upon. You needed someone who knew the Bible up, down, left, and right in order to be able to have those kind of conversations with people and not just conversations, but be like, you're wrong. And let me tell you why you're wrong. Because an amazing thing about seminary school, now I've never been to seminary school, but I've heard and watched some things where people are saying that some people, they grow up in very uber conservative backgrounds and hateful communities and that sort of thing. And they're like, I went to seminary school as super conservative and I came out as liberal, because something about going to seminary caused them to understand that, first of all, there's a lot that's gone into the production and the interpretation and the, translation of the Bible, right? And then, so they're not just reading the Bible, they're reading, the actual original text. They're actually learning Greek, they're learning Hebrew, they're learning the actual languages, right? But not only that, but they become much more cognizant of the fact that the New Testament especially is about love. That the gospel of Jesus is all about love with a capital L. And so you needed a person who wasn't just a pastor of a church, not some self-ordained pastor, whatever. No, someone who went to seminary school, someone who had a doctorate, someone who had learned Greek, someone who learned Hebrew, someone who looked at the original text. You needed someone like that to counter all of the negative, nasty religious programming that had been permeating in America and around the world when it came to the color of people's skin for hundreds of years. That's one of the most compelling things that I take from Martin Luther King's story, that oftentimes in life, what you're doing, whether you realize it or not, is preparing you for something, a future that you don't even know or can't predict or can't see. And that oftentimes it's preparing you to be able to face off against people who have ill intentions and use whatever they can to try and get away with it, right? Use whatever kind of dogma or reinterpretations or whatever to get away with doing what they're doing, which is usually very wrong. And you have to be very knowledgeable in order to call them on their BS. That is why reading is fundamental. That is why actually reading the original things. If someone's telling you something, look it up yourself, right? You actually want to learn more so about the Bible. Learn Hebrew, learn Greek, and start reading this stuff yourself. Don't let anyone be a middleman or middlewoman in your understanding of what's happening in the world, what's happened in history, what's happening now, etc. And take a lesson from the life of Martin Luther King. He was able to fight head on when it came to words and understanding of the very text and dogma and religiosity that had been used against his people and millions of people around the world for hundreds of years.